Hello and welcome. This is Johnny Ross, Fractional CMO. We are live. We are live on Instagram. We're live on LinkedIn. We are live on YouTube. You might be joining us on the podcast afterwards, and welcome. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a great listener. This is Johnny Ross, Fractional CMO podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Bryan Adams. Bryan is the former CEO and founder of Ph.Creative. Bryan, you sold literally, was it just a couple of days ago? Is that right?
It is, I think, 4 days ago.
Yeah.
Very new for me.
When we had this booked in and I'd sort of planned the show and written all my notes and everything, I've just had to rewrite everything, but
ruined everything.
That's
no problem.
That's business life for you. So Bryan is the former CEO and founder of Ph.Creative. You spent 20 years transforming employee branding. Recently, as I said, sold to focus on your new venture, should I say, which is Happy Dance, creating top-notch careers websites. At Ph.Creative, Bryan earned nearly 75 global awards and worked with leading brands, leaving a lasting impact with his give and get philosophy. With Happy Dance, Bryan's vision is everyone loves their job, helping companies showcase their employee brand online. In today's episode, we're exploring Bryan's experiences, purpose-told storytelling, and strategies for building a strong, inclusive employer brand. Get ready for an energetic, thought-provoking session. So let's dive in. Bryan, tell me a bit about your journey in founding Ph.Creative and Happy Dance. And you work with some seriously big clients, don't you?
I'm super proud of the brands we've worked with. Been really lucky, worked with an amazing team. Like you say, last Friday, the world changed, but it's been a 20-year journey, and it started spontaneously because I was made to feel 2 inches tall by a boss in a job, which I loved. I was working as a designer in a lifestyle magazine. And this big guy, looked like Bluto from Popeye, came out in front of 50 people, put his 2 big fists on my desk and leant in with his coffee breath and bawled me out for something I'd done wrong. But I went home, quit, and started Ph.Creative the next day, just spontaneously. So I'm really grateful for that, and we started out as a general marketing and design agency. But, well, as you'll know, Johnny, it's not easy to get the attention of CMOs and marketing departments. So after a few years, we fell into doing marketing for recruiters, and we thought, there's something to this. And HR leaders are kind of nice people, and they call us back. They answer the phone. So we started to sort of lean into that many years ago, before employer brand was a thing. So we were lucky from a timing perspective. We got in early. And then after a few years, we took what seemed like a very brave step to sort of really niche in and say, look, we're only doing employer branding now. We're only doing this tiny little thing, which was terrifying at the time. But within the space of 18 months to 2 years, we went from our biggest, this is crazy when I think about this, Johnny, and you're from Liverpool, even though you hide it well, Johnny. So you might remember Bold Street Sweets. I don't know whether you remember that.
Well, I certainly remember Bold Street a huge amount. I'm not sure I remember Bold Street Sweets, though.
So there was a candy store, as I would say, for my American friends, a sweet shop on Bold Street, and they were paying us what seemed like a fortune every month to market their company and all the rest of it. They were our biggest client. So within the space of 18 months of focused in our niche, I found myself sat in the headquarters of Apple, doing their first ever employer brand many years ago. So that is the power of really niching down and being very specific with what you do. But the rest is sort of history, as it were. But we developed our own approach to employer branding out of naivety and stupidity and all the rest of it, more than sort of good luck and planning. And it got the attention of the industry, and we grew really quickly, and that was it. Then we won Apple, we went to American Airlines, and that led to a whole host of giant brands. And we never looked back.
Well, there's a huge amount to be said for niching. I fully agree with you, and the way I see this is because a lot of what I talk about is marketing, and of course we're talking about marketing HR departments in a way, but like we were just talking in the green room, this feeds so much into the brand full stop, and organizations are all about the people, and if you can, and the way I see it is that if you can attract the right people, then you're halfway to having good marketing. And so, and as you were saying, if the two work so well together in terms of just the overall brand anyway. In fact, just say what your insights were on what I was talking about there.
Yeah, so I mean, we were talking just earlier, weren't we, about, you know, in this day and age, we're in a sort of identity culture where, you know, consumers want to know the ethics of an organization. Like, you know, they want to know that you're treating your people well and you've got an ethical supply chain and all this kind of stuff. And employer brand now is seen as one of the driving forces, or certainly the insight of the character and the culture of an organization. A lot of the global brands we work with, up to 80 or 90% of the potential talent audience, or the candidate audience, were also customers. And, you know, people don't distinguish between candidate experience or consumer experience. It's just all brand experience. And quite often it's an untapped opportunity to mold your brand reputation, create positioning in the marketplace, and leverage all the opportunity that it brings. And, you know, the switched on organizations now are sort of tapping into that. In fact, we're seeing more and more employer brand being led, or at least partnered with, marketing departments. So it really is sort of cohesive.
Typically, the size of organizations you work with are employing sort of 1,000 staff upwards, and I wanted to tap into some of the chief HR officers and chief talent officers that you might be working with, or talent attraction, should I say. But it's worth mentioning that for anyone listening, any business owner out there listening, if you apply some of this stuff to your business, you are going to absolutely increase your brand desirability and create that attraction, whether it be from a talent point of view or just a sales point of view. So it's about applying these things. But just thinking about some of the chief HR officers out there in some of these big brands, do they all get it, or is there still a long way to go in some sectors and some industries? And you know, help me understand the playing field in terms of where some of these big organizations are, and some of the mistakes that they still are making, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first instinct is to assume that the bigger the organization, the more forward thinking and switched on the people leaders are. And it's not always the case. You know, most often, if we're brought in, I say we, it's no longer, it's not, you know, but over the last 20 years, if Ph.Creative was brought into an organization, it meant that it was a company that was serious about not just creating a reputation as an employer, but really honing in on articulating the employee value proposition such that, you know, they did get it. A lot of the time, though, especially working with mid-sized organizations, or sometimes we'd work with like funded startups that like wanted to grow aggressively, we'd have to spend some time educating. And, you know, one of the things that as an agency and consultancy we always do is have to bring a lot of different leaders along for the journey, just sort of reinforcing just how important these branded touch points are, and the difference you can make as a leader, influencing and sort of leading by example when it comes to values and the principles of an organization, and trying to build the culture you want. You know, so I guess one of the big misconceptions is, you know, can you choose to have an employer brand or not? No, not at all. Everybody has an employer brand. Everybody has a reputation as an employer. It's just whether you choose to design that yourself and lead it intentionally, or just organically, you know, leave it to chance. And I think, especially with AI now and technology, the way it's going, you know, AI has just made technology innovation, a utility like gas, water, electric. You know this, Johnny, but people are the only competitive advantage left in business, which is why we're now seeing a rise in people brand, employer brand being more and more important, even to small startups. You know, it can be the difference between winning or losing, staying in business, going out of business, growing, or, you know, all of that good stuff.
You talk a lot about employee value propositions.
Mm-hmm.
How do they differ to that traditional employer branding, and what, you know, just help explain them?
So employer brand is the sort of, you know, the wrapping paper over the whole, you know, sort of reputation of an organization, what people, how people describe you as an employer. The employee value proposition is how you articulate what somebody stands to benefit from if they join your organization, but also, and this was something that we brought to the market, also what the employee needs to be willing to give. So we call it the give and get, rather than it be a one-way broadcast of strengths, benefits, and opportunities to be attractive. It's a two-way value exchange. So candidates and employees alike are really clear: why should I join? Why should I stay? You know, what's in it for me? But also answering the one burning question that everybody has: what does it take to thrive? Do I have what it takes to thrive? And, you know, what you're going to ask of me, maybe it's an investment of a lot of time. Is the work-life balance? You know, is it I'm going to have to work with teams, and I'm going to have to learn to communicate more and collaborate and innovate and all of these things. Do I have it in me to give what you need? Because every organization is different. And is the juice worth the squeeze?
It's the juice worth the squeeze. I like it. So you talked about the employer brand being the wrapping paper, and the EVP being part of that. What are the other key elements of an employer brand then?
Yeah, so there's basically three levels of strategy. The first is reputation. Most organizations, even now, still think that just setting out to be the most attractive or the best in your industry or the best in the world is enough as a reputation. And what we're finding is you need to be a lot more tangible with the reputation you're trying to cultivate as an employer. That's typically the North Star. It's also, interestingly, Johnny, the crossover with your consumer brand and the sort of marketing messages. So the first layer is reputation. But what do you want that reputation to be? Is it around career catalyst, so a place to accelerate your career? Is it around culture, how it feels to belong? Or is it around citizenship, leaving the world better than you found it? They're typically the three broad strokes. Then we come to the proposition. Okay, so that's what you want to be known for. The proposition is the how. How are you going to do that? And then the final layer is the talent experience. Where are you going to cultivate those branded touch points to prove out the proposition and live up to the reputation? So that's the three layers of employer brand strategy that make up typically what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
And a lot of then how you implement this is through purpose-told storytelling. So how does that relate to employer branding then?
Well, again, you know, from one professional communicator to the next, storytelling is probably, well, it's not probably, it is the most effective means of human communication. And I've studied storytelling for the most part of my life. You know, I've worked a lot with Robert McKee, and I've interviewed countless of the world's best storytellers. And actually, Robert McKee says it best. He says, you know, if your brain is hardware, storytelling is the software you run to make sense of the world. You know, and that really sort of brings it home, doesn't it? But, you know, if you can tell a compelling story, you get the opportunity to communicate information, but you also get the opportunity to open people's imaginations so they can imagine themselves in that situation. They can, and the goal is to create a human connection and create an emotive connection. And storytelling is by far the best way of doing that. And also, if you can get an employee or a customer to tell a story about their experience, then it goes from a corporate brand initiative to a real human insight. And that's where, you know, you cross that line from a corporate brand to something that's real, authentic, and identifiable. And, storytelling has been something that, I've been a student of for the last 20 odd years, and probably will be for the rest of my days.
Yeah, we talk a lot about storytelling in marketing, and certainly on this podcast as well. And it makes it so much more relatable. People, it just, as you say, it opens the imagination. I talk a lot about the book Building a Story Brand, which is a great book that I'd highly recommend to anyone listening if you've not read it. It's a really great actionable plan.
Donald Miller.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And there's an actionable plan in there to tease that story out. And I highly agree with you. So any examples on sort of human stories that can be effectively used for talent attraction then? Is it sort of how people have progressed in the business? What's the typical stories that you're telling then?
So one of the sweet spot things that I love to do when I go inside an organization is to find those stories. First of all, we want to get the essence of what is this organization? What's the culture? What's the employee experience? What's the essence? Like, what are we saying we've got that somebody else is going to find compelling? Not just why do you join, but why do you stay? Once we've got those ingredients, now our job is to find the most interesting way of telling a story so it's authentic and it comes to life. People can imagine, okay, I can see myself in that situation. So my favorite way of doing this is I'll go inside an organization and I'll get a room full of people together and I'll say, right, this is the game we're going to play. Okay. If it was your job to dissuade somebody from joining this organization, so you've got to put them off, but you're not allowed to lie. You've got to tell the truth. What would you say? So straight away, people are like, are we allowed to say these things? Once we've got past that, people will be like, there's never enough time in the day. You finish your deadline. There's always another, people are very forthcoming after a while with the harsh realities and adversities of the employee experience. Now, typically, conventionally, that's not something that brands talk about a lot. But what we found is that is the fastest way to get to the source of passion and pride, acknowledgement, appreciation of inside an organization possible. So, of course, we can then follow up and say, oh, okay, that sounds difficult. That sounds tough. Why do you put up with that? Like, what's the benefit of that? So they'll then tell you, oh, well, not everybody can do this. And like when I first started, like I couldn't do this, couldn't do that. I fell into the deep end and it was da-da-da. But I learned these skills and the people around me were amazing and they helped me and da-da-da. And afterwards, this is how I felt, and you'll notice this, Johnny, we've just walked through a 3-act structure of the perfect story. We started off with, in a place in the past, we then met an obstacle. And then we hear what happens on the other side of the obstacle. And it's just a beautiful way of pulling out those stories. And also being really honest about what somebody might find inside your organization, how to navigate those challenges and why it's worth it. The value on the other side, if you can overcome that adversity. And of course, that is story gold aligned perfectly with an employer brand.
Well, can you tell any sort of stories that you must have heard so many over the years? I'm trying to get some examples of those golden stories, just to try and, well, again, get people's imagination going in terms of what they might find in their own organization. Any examples of some of those stories that you can think of that's a bit of gold dust there?
Yeah. So I remember, I think it's going to be okay to talk about this now. So it was many years ago. I remember I was in American Airlines and they gave me no notice or warning that what I was walking into. And I walked into a room full of aeronautical engineers. And I was quite excited about this because I just had a tour of all these big planes and some of them were in bits. And I got to stand inside of a jumbo jet engine and it was amazing. So I was meeting these guys who were fixing I walked in and expecting to have a really good afternoon. And they were the grumpiest, most negative, down in the mouth, I don't want to be here, sulky group of people I'd ever seen in my life. And they were all like this and they didn't want to talk to me. You know, and it turns out they were under the conditions of 2 unions. They were training people. They were training a new breed of people who were coming in, and once they were trained, they were taking their job and all this kind of stuff. Like, they weren't happy at all. They didn't want to talk to me, answer any of the questions, and it wasn't forthcoming. So the first 20 minutes of this workshop was flat, to say the least. And I've got this agenda with all these positive, smiley questions, and I'm looking at this going, this isn't gonna work at all, you know. So that went out the window, and we started to dig into, well, listen, guys, and it was a room full of just men, which isn't typical. There are quite a few sort of female engineers now, actually, but they were all like this. And I eventually got one of them to start opening up a little bit by prodding him, saying, look, you know, you don't like it here. Like, what are you doing here, kind of thing? And he said, I don't particularly enjoy my job. I don't think I get paid enough. I think I'm put under immense pressure. The hours are crazy. I'm being forced to train people who I know ultimately are going to, you know, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay. So I eventually got to, why'd you do it? And he said, my parents were Mormon. I didn't have electricity growing up. He said, my son has just graduated from Harvard, and that's because of American Airlines. So I was like, okay. So I got goosebumps. I was like, this is amazing. I'm like, tell me what. And he said, well, at American Airlines, as one of the benefits, we can all fly anywhere in the world at any time. And growing up, when my son was doing a history lesson, I got to take him to Rome and stand him in the middle of the Colosseum. And he got to see and look and feel and smell what that was like. When he was studying geography, we went to the base camp of the first base camp of Everest, and he got to experience. Anyway, he started telling that story, and he said, I allowed him to experience the world and give him a rich upbringing of inclusion and diversity and this broad array of what the world could offer him. And it made him the man he is today. And I swear to God, this guy was telling me the story, and the big burly men around him had tears in his eyes, and I was well enough. I'm thinking, oh my God. And that broke the ice. And other people were like, yeah, do you know what? I was able to bring my nan's twin sister over from Australia to have them reunited for their 75th birthday after 30 years. And that was a privilege. I got to do that. So we went from, I don't like this place and I'm not talking to you, to the most incredibly moving stories that I'd ever heard, that were life-changing in the room, and a real insight as to, if you join the largest airline in the world, you get this employee benefit, which is a privilege that could change lives and really impact generations of your own family. And it was amazing. I'm probably not sort of relaying it to this sort of with the impact that I experienced in the room, but it really was a profound moment and something I'll never forget.
I've got goosebumps with you telling me that story, by the way. So I think you are doing it justice. I think what you're highlighting there is that, you know, this bullet point that American Airlines could put out that says, you know, as part of our package, you get to fly all over the world, has nothing on it compared to the story behind it and the different and the lives it can affect. So there is a fantastic example. Yeah, makes a lot of sense, and what a brilliant story. Yeah, so there we go. Okay, so and I like the way that you tease it out by, you know, starting with the negatives, you know, and ultimately it ends in well, why are you working here? Come on, you know, it sounds horrific, but why are you still here then?
And you know, it's a tough job, and it's the same in every airline, apart from you don't get that benefit in every airline. You know, it's a very difficult job. So you were never going to get the story of, I whistle to work, I love what I do, and but we found something a lot more profound. And I'll tell you this, Johnny, in 20 years, we've never gone into a room of people and not found something compelling and a story worth telling. Every organization has it. But when you look at the employer brand, like, if you go and look at the employer brand of your top favorite organizations or whatever, sometimes you look at them and their talent competitors, their employer brand sort of tagline, if you like, you could swap them and shuffle them. And sometimes it makes no difference whatsoever. It's vanilla, it's surface level, and all the rest of it. And it's a shame because
gym membership and
yeah, and if you scratch below the surface and put the effort in to find what makes you different and really what's in your DNA and special, and put your finger on how people feel inside your organization, magic can happen, and it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And I think we're going to see more organizations double down on their employer brand as a front running brand over the next 10 years than ever before.
You've certainly given a strategy there for C-suite execs and HR professionals on building a world-class employer brand. But what other specific strategies could they be implementing or considering to take them on that journey to that world-class employer brand? So if you think about some of your, you work a lot with head of talent attraction, you work a lot with chief HR officers. What are some of the strategies that they should be implementing straight away?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Johnny, because since Friday, I'm now focused 100% of my time in Happy Dance. And
I was going to come on to Happy Dance, and I'm very welcome to have a shameless plug. But
no, I'm not here to sort of advertise or whatever. But it's something really close to my heart, which is candidate experience. 10 years ago, we worked with Virgin. Graham Johnson, the talent leader there, who we still work with today. We've worked with for years. We did something quite special at Virgin, and we proved the business case. They had terrible candidate experience in Virgin. They asked us to come in and say, look, we've got negative NPS, Net Promoter Score. We want positive. Can you help us? The brief changed ultimately to, we challenged the brief to, what if we created a candidate experience that was so elevated that whether you got a job at Virgin or not, you were a better person for the experience. So you learned something about yourself, you learned something about the brand, you came out of it a better candidate, so that's how we elevated. But what we discovered was out of 120,000 applicants a year, 18% of those candidates were customers. And a percentage of those people were so annoyed by a poor candidate experience, they were going home and switching to Sky, and it was costing them $6 million a year. I mean, it was just, crazy. So that proved the pound, shilling, and pence sort of cost of poor brand experience. So ever since then, experience by design has been close to our heart, and obviously the overlap and the sort of synergies with employer brand is quite profound. So now at Happy Dance, our goal is to present a career website that showcases employer brand as it should be and offers world-class candidate experience. We want to be the sexiest brand showcase in the world, if I can use that term. Joe, what do you think of that? Sexiest? Do you get that?
I get it.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm playing with that at the moment. But that's what we do. That's what we do at Happy Dance. And it's Happy Dance was a division of Ph.Creative. It was a little baby, sort of nurtured and cultivated in Ph.Creative, and now it's an independent business. And that's what I'm doing over there. And I think we can continue to work with some of the world's largest employers. And
I was about to say, you're working with just the same large brands.
Yeah.
You were naming Canva, Nike, Apple. Add a few more for me.
So Nike and Apple were PH, but there's Domino's, Caterpillar, Peloton,
big brands, big well-known brands,
Absolutely,
and so this is so Happy Dance is enabling large brands to be able to change the candidate experience and ultimately increase that candidate experience.
Yeah, so the most important online asset of any employer brand is the career website. That's your brand-owned domain. People come onto there and they search for jobs. They want to know, the job description and all that kind of stuff, but they want to get a feel for okay, what's the employee experience? What's the culture? What's going to be expected of me? Am I going to like it? Will I fit in? You know, all of that stuff. So the career website is probably, it's almost like the importance of the product page on Amazon. You know, this is the equivalent. So we've produced this scalable SaaS product that allows brands to showcase their employer brand in a very tailored way and optimize the candidate experience. And that's what we're fully focused on now. And in a world that is obsessed with candidate experience, what's really strange, Johnny, is we haven't got too many competitors that are just focused on career websites and obsessed with candidate experience. So I'm excited to step into the space.
Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity, and I can be totally familiar with a marketing agency supporting HR and recruitment marketing, and yeah, none of them do it very well. So
Well,
I agree.
There's the opportunity. Yeah.
You authored Give and Get, Repel the Many and Compel the Few with Impact, Purpose and Belonging. What were some of the key takeaways from that book?
So, well, I mentioned one earlier, you know, introducing the concept of talking about and building an employee value proposition around adversities and harsh realities, and being very upfront with what it takes to thrive. So it's the give and get, the two-way value exchange. You know, we made the decision, instead of keeping our approach as our secret sauce, our sort of IP that we, you know, was behind the curtain, we thought we'd give it away and impact the industry. And that's what we did. And that was a real propellant to sort of putting us on the map. And, you know, what we set out to do was dispel this idea that you should put your employer brand forward as the sunshine and rainbows side of the truth of, you know, what it's like to work there. And actually what people are looking for is the balanced reality of, okay, tell me about the benefits and the strengths and the opportunities and all the rest of it and what it's like on a good day. But what am I really expecting? What am I in for? What do I need to bring from a character and capability perspective? So that's what the book is about. It's a blueprint laying out a strategy for authentic employee value proposition. And it feels a bit cringy saying this, but, you know, we get feedback of like this is the employer brand Bible that a lot of employer brand leaders carry around and reference all the time.
It sounds like a well worth read, and we'll add a link into the show notes of where you can check that out, along with Happy Dance as well. Just to sort of wrap this up a bit, in terms of just thinking future and latest trends, you were talking, you know, we need to even be considering Generation Alpha now as well. What are some of the latest trends in terms of employee branding? What should organizations be aware of? And, you know, I'm throwing in this, I threw in that gym membership earlier, you know, that I mean that's, you know, it's many years ago, isn't it? But what is the latest thing that companies need to be thinking about introducing?
So I'll give a little plug to a couple of friends of mine who started an organization last year called Open.org. And we've had some amazing discussions, and ultimately what they believe, and I fully agree with, is where this is going is the ultimate measure of employer brand is transparency. It's the ability to be so authentic that you can be transparent about your business strategy, how you intend to get there, what you stand for, what things are really like, instead of just covering things up and spinning what you want an audience to see. Because especially with a talent audience who are invested in finding out what the truth is, they will find out the warts and all. You may as well just own it and be transparent, and at least you can then position the truth in context, you know, and own the narrative. And again, we're back to storytelling. So I think transparency is a trend that we're going to see a lot more of, and ultimately, you know, be the ultimate measure of.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but is that difficult for some of the bigger organizations where they're trying to balance stakeholders and yeah? So how do they balance?
It's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's not easy at all, and it's going to be a journey, and a lot of it is going to be forced to be more transparent by people publishing more about the inside of an organization, and being called out and having opinions and all of this stuff, and ultimately the fastest route, slow is smooth, smooth is fast kind of thing, is a strategic approach to employer brand. And I still think 99% of the world are operating, even some brilliant employer brands are operating more tactically than strategic, and not aligning with business strategy. So I think we're going to see employer brand go higher up the food chain and be taken more seriously at C-suite leadership level, which is definitely we're seeing that happen. But I think most organizations are still tactically dealing with the lumps and bumps of the pandemic. How to now get a fully distributed populace back into one city and one office, like back to work, back to the office. That's a massive challenge. Diversity, equity, and inclusion has taken a bit of bruising over the last 12 months for a variety of reasons. How organizations are going to keep hold of their diverse talent through some of this turmoil. Even the election coming up in the US and obviously the UK in the nearer time frame. Organizations are sort of waiting with bated breath to see what's going to happen with the economy. And all of these things impact whether businesses are hiring or firing or transitioning or whatever. So it's never a dull moment in employer branding, Johnny. There's always something to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and ultimately you've got to be the most attractive. Simple as that. If you want the right talent, the right employees, you've got to make sure that you're up there.
Well, you've got to be compelling, and if you're going to use the word attractive, you need to back that up with why. And I think brands who have the most organized employer brand, they know why they're attractive to a small segment of the audience, and they know why they're not to the vast majority. And you said it earlier, the front of the Give and Get book is repel the many to compel the few. You have to be confident that you're not right for every person that comes along, so it's a balancing act.
For any large brands out there, perhaps the chief HR officers or the head of talent are listening, where is the best place to find you? Where do you hang out online? Is it I know that the happydance.love is the website, but where do you typically hang out?
So LinkedIn is probably
LinkedIn?
where I'm most active. I think it's Bryan Adams, like the singer, #1, or Bryan Adams Happy Dance, or Bryan Adams Ph.Creative, and you'll find me really easily.
We'll drop a load of links into the show notes as well. For me, this episode has also backed up just branding and marketing in general, in terms of storytelling is so important. And in fact, Bryan, just to how you were talking about the transparency becoming a huge thing going forwards in terms of employer branding, I think transparency in marketing, full stop, and really sort of helping consumers, or whether that be businesses or customers, really understand what your business is about, and being authentic and transparent, I think is a really strong message. So thank you for that. Really enjoyed this, Bryan. Thank you very much indeed. Congratulations on selling Ph.Creative very recently. And good luck with Happy Dance moving forward. We'll see you all soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bryan, thank you for being here. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.